Hello everyone, and welcome to the February 2018 update of the Power BI desktop. As always, we have lots of exciting features to talk about today. So many, in fact, this month that they almost didn't fit on my PowerPoint slide. And as always, the first thing we're going to start with are the reporting features. And the first feature that I'm going to talk about today is one that I know a lot of people have been waiting a really long time for, and it's the ability to cross-highlight using data points across multiple charts. So I can select, say, computers from the bar chart, and then I can pick Texas in my pie chart and have the rest of all the visuals on my page be filtered down to just Texas and computers. You don't have to do anything extra to have this enabled for your report. All you have to do is control click across however many charts you want. So let me show you that in action. So if I hold down my control key and click Home Appliances in this first chart, and then I go and filter everything down to cluster 1, let's say, in my scatter chart, this table is showing me only products in cluster 1 that are home appliances. And of course, I can continue to control click around, so I can also click on computers and remove home appliances by clicking on it again. And now I have a computers here. Everything's just from cluster 1. I can also test out cluster 5. And it sounds pretty small by itself, but it's a really impactful feature, being able to select across multiple charts. It lets you combine many different types of categorical filters across your entire report, and you can really dig in really deep. And it's, of course, something that a lot of people have expected to be able to do for a while now as well. Just to show you in a little maybe easier to see example, you can also go computers in here, and then regular. And so now all I'm seeing in this table down here are regular computers. Because the filters are applying everywhere, you'll notice now the source of cross-highlightings, so in this case regular and computers, are also being cross-highlighted themselves. So the blue part here are, of course, computers. Everything else fades out because nothing else in this chart is computers, but it's also only half filled because only about half of computers are regular computers instead of deluxe and economy. And same with this. This pie chart it's not filled because it's additionally being filtered by computers from the other chart. It's nice to be able to look whenever you're using this. Make sure to watch out if you've been control clicking a lot and you're not sure what your source of cross highlighting is anymore. Make sure you look for the selection bar around the charts to help you remember what were the charts you've been control clicking in. And of course, all the nice things that we already do for cross-highlighting will work with this as well. So, for example, bookmarking. We let you bookmark cross-highlighting, so that means you'll be able to save this multi-state cross-highlighting as well whenever you're applying your bookmarks. The next bullet point on my list is another one of those really highly asked for features from our user voice site, ideas.powerbi.com. This feature is the ability to have report-level slicers, so slicers that can influence more than just one page of your report. And the way we're enabling this is for you to be able to sync your slicers across pages that you pick for in your report. And to make that a little more clear, I'm going to demo this feature for you. So I have this slicer on my first page of the report, and I want to be able to, as I change the value of the slicer, I want it to also influence what I'm going to be seeing on page 2 of my report when my users switch between them. And so the way that I used to not be able to do that at all unless I used my report level filters, but now if I want it to sync, all I have to do is select the slicer, and through my View tab, I can, along with all these other panes that we have now, I also have a Sync Slicer pane. And when I open it, I'm able to see this. So this first one listed here, this product category sales page, is the page I'm on. And I have a slicer. It's visible. That's what this column on the right means. Is it visible or not? And what is its value? Is its value being synced or not? Obviously, the slicer on the page is synced to influence itself. But I also, like I said, wanted to influence what's being shown on page 2 as well. So what I'm going to do is all I have to do is check this box for page 2, and now my value is going to influence page 2. So let me just show you that. So if I filter down to, say, Australia, and then I go over to page 2, now you'll be able to tell that this data is a little bit different. Actually, you can't tell because I don't have country here. But if I add country, you'll see that everything here is Australia. Everything in this table is Australian. That's the same with all these charts as well. It's all Australian data. And now, if I go back and I switch it to France and go back to page 2, you'll see everything, all the data on this report is filtered down to France. And so if I wanted this slicer to influence all of my pages, all I'd have to do is check the box for all of the different pages on my report, and it will change the filters everywhere. And we're letting you pick because we want to enable scenarios where some pages you want to influence by this one slicer and others you don't. And this is important because we've heard feedback that a lot of people also use pages like this page, where I'm using my country slicer to be able to compare and contrast two different countries to each other. And I wouldn't want either of these slicers to be influenced by this slicer here, because it has different goals. One is for comparison, and one is just for drilling down and learning more about my data for a specific country. Another thing you get to pick is if that slicer is visible on the other page or not. So by default, just by clicking the sync button for page 2, you didn't see the slicer on that page. But if I check this box with the eyeball, it's going to make the slicer visible on that first page, the page 2 as well. So now users can be able to see between them across multiple pages that I am filtering down to France. And we're letting you make the decision on if you want that filter context being applied visible or not. To give you a little more details on how this is actually working, what we're actually doing is, because we have that ability to hide and show visuals, what we're doing is we're adding every time you check this box to add it to more pages, what we're doing is we're actually adding the exact same slicer to that page, and we're hiding it automatically. So the slicer exists on that page. We're syncing the values between those slicers, and as long as you don't check the eyeball or turn the eyeball on through the selection pane as well, that we of course have here, as long as you don't change the eyeball state through either of these two panes, the user won't actually know there is another slicer on that page. Obviously, this is a really powerful feature, and we imagine a lot of people starting now to set up their reports similar to what we've seen some people do with their Excel reports as well, of setting up a home page where the user will set up all the filters that they want for the rest of their report. And then after that, they'll just start navigating between all the pages and expecting all those filters from that first page to just influence everything else they're seeing across the whole report. Third on our list is an improvement to our numeric range slicer that is currently in preview. So if you're using that, you may have noticed that if you're putting a whole number into that slicer, it can sometimes show numerical, for the numerical input boxes, it can show decimal places in there instead if you're just dragging the sliders, even though you have it marked as a whole number. So we've improved that. So if you're using a whole number field, it will always snap to those whole numbers in the slicer. So let me replace this drop-down slicer for my country with, let's go with store key. Now this wasn't going to be a great use of the numerical range slider, but it is a whole number, so it will demonstrate the feature. So this is the store key. Is using the numeric range slider, and for the format of the store key field, I marked it as a whole number. And so previously, as I dragged these sliders, it would show decimal places for like 1.5, 1.76, but now as I drag, it is always snapping to the whole number positions in that slider. And so that eliminates some of the weirdness that some people have been facing in whenever they were using the numeric slicer. The fourth reporting feature is an improvement we are making to Bing Maps. We've implemented a new way of using Bing Maps that's going to result in a lot faster geocoding. So if you're using the location field in your map and relying on Bing and us to come back with all the exact coordinates for all of your locations, so like for example, if you're giving us the city name and we're pulling back the coordinates and plotting them on the map, that can take some time, especially if you have a lot of locations you're trying to geocode. And this new way that we're using Bing's APIs for our maps is going to result in a lot faster geocoding. In some cases, it can result in a 6x improvement. It's very noticeable, especially if you're using a lot of fields. A lot of locations in your data. Now, we know a lot of times whenever we make changes to maps, our Bing map, it can make people a little anxious, and so we want to be very careful when releasing this improvement. Now, you shouldn't notice any location differences. It should look exactly the same, just coming back loaded with all the data a lot faster. But we wanted to make sure everything went smoothly for this release, so we're choosing to very cautiously flight out this feature. So that means that you won't notice anything different in the desktop for now. While we're flighting it out to users slowly, so it's basically like a preview. What I mean by flighting is that it's going to be released slowly to some users, and after a while, everyone's going to start seeing it, and we're just going to slowly expand the audience that is getting this new faster geocoding. And because of the nature of that, it's first just going to hit the web. You won't notice anything different in the desktop, but the web, for your consumers and you, whenever you're messing with your report in the web, you will likely see it starting to work faster if you're in the flight. I wanted to mention this here because even though right now you're not going to see the difference on the desktop, I wanted to make sure everyone was aware of this change that we are doing. It should all be for the good, but just so that you're aware, you can check out your maps in the web and see how much if they're faster or not. The fifth feature for the reporting section is another one of those small formatting features that we try to get out at least one every single month to continue to add more and more power to our visualizations. And this one is something that a lot of people who use Excel a lot is probably going to be excited about. We're going to now assuming they're not going to overlap with other data labels, we're going to let your data labels overflow outside the space of the bar in the bar and column charts. So let me show you that. So I'm going to turn on data labels for this chart. And I'm going to let's put them on the inside in so that they're now inside the chart. And I'm not going to put any kind of display unit. I want to show the whole number. And so by default right now, you don't see any of the numbers because they're all too long to fit in the space at the bar. But we now have this new overflow option that will let the numbers flow outside the bar. And so now you can see even though they didn't fit in the bar, they're now exploding out. We will still not show them if they can't fit vertically, so they're not going to run into the axis text, the text of the axis. And if they do start to interfere with each other, so in this case, if these two were just a little bit closer and they would have ran into each other, we will still drop them. We still have that auto detection logic that will drop one of the labels, as you can see here. But this should make it a lot easier for you to show even more of your values, especially if they're long like these numbers. And if you are concerned with the readability of them, I suggest using the background option that we gave you last month so that I can, for example, add a slight gray, or personally I prefer the white, transparency with a pretty high transparency, and it just makes it a lot easier to be able to see the text on your labels. Last but not least, for the reporting features, we have so many options now in our formatting pane, in our analytics pane. It can sometimes be hard to find what you're looking for, especially if you're looking for something like a specific font color. You can't remember exactly what card it is, but you know it's a font color, and that's all you know. we're now letting you search for things in the formatting pane and in the analytics pane to reduce all the different options you're seeing to just the things that match your search term. So for example, if I'm looking for, go in the formatting pane, search box is right at the top. If I'm looking for color, I can search for color, and all I'm going to see are the color options and within each of the cards. So now I know this is the color for the axis, one of these is for the axis itself, and one is for the title, data color, data labels color, and background color. And so what we're doing is, like I said, just filtering down the pane to show you the options that match your search, either the card name itself or the options in the card as well. And so this can just make it a lot quicker for you as you're looking for a specific formatting feature to narrow down the list and find what you're looking for. Next up is the analytics section, and we have two features to talk about this month. The first is that you can now mark your own custom date table. So if you have your own date table that you're bringing in and you want us to use that and not automatically create our own date table behind the scenes, you can now mark that in Power BI Desktop directly. So if you have a table and it's a date table, let's just pretend for a second that this is a date table. I could right click and mark as date table from here. Or if I have the table selected in the pane, I can also mark it as a date table from the ribbon. And whenever I open this dialog, it will ask me to select whatever is the date to be used in the column. And there's a couple of requirements. It must be marked as a date, as its data type. It must not have any gaps in the data, so it can't skip days. And it also must have unique values. So you can't have duplicate dates for this date column. So it's showing me it will show in the drop down any options that are marked as a date. So in my case, I have one. Because this is not a true date table that I was using to demo it on, it doesn't actually meet all of that criteria. So it will actually warn me and tell me which ones are the criteria that it's not meeting right now. If it did meet all of the criteria, I will be able to hit OK, and all the built-in date tables in Power BI will be automatically removed. Bear in mind that if that happens, some of your visuals or DAX that was relying on that will break, and you'll have to update them to reference your new date column. The next feature in the analytics section is we are now generally available for our quick measures feature. It's been out for not quite a year. I think it went out in May of last year. Sometime, late spring, early summer, we released our quick measures feature in preview, where instead of having to always manually write all of your DAX, we'd have a nice UI experience through a dialog where you can pick out a list of different measures, anything from simple math like addition and multiplication to things that are much more complicated like running totals, and be able to just pick up the columns you want to use from your table, and we will automatically create that new measure for you. It's been in preview until now, and for this month, you no longer need to turn on that preview switch. You'll just see the option in the ribbon and in the right-click menu for you to use. A nice addition at the same time as we're making this feature generally available, we're also allowing you, since we've done the feature I just talked about of marking your own custom date table, you'll be able to use your custom date table instead of our built-in one for any of those time intelligence features. Previously, up until now, you always had to use our built-in date fields for that. No longer is the case. You can now use your dates as well, assuming they are marked as a date table. Under custom visuals this month, the first bullet point actually isn't a custom visual itself, but is a really big improvement to our custom visual experience. We're starting to preview organizational custom visuals. So what this means is someone in your IT department of your company can go in and review custom visuals or create their own that they want used within their company, and then they can mark these custom visuals as organizationally approved, you could say. And if the admin goes and adds these pre-approved custom visuals to within their admin portal, and we have instructions on how to do that in the blog and in our documentation for any admins out there. Once an admin has marked these custom visuals as approved, you will be able to find them through the store within the desktop immediately. We have a new tab called Organizational, and you'll be able to click on it and see any pre-approved custom visuals. You'll be able to find them inside the marketplace, so either from the ribbon or through the menu in the visualizations pane. Once you've opened the marketplace, you'll see all of the custom visuals by default, and you can of course filter and search all you want. But you also have this My Organization tab, and when you click on that, if you have any pre-approved custom visuals from your organization, you can come here to find them. I don't have any in my company, but assuming your organization has done this, you would see them here. And this is really useful because since these have been approved by the admins in your company, that they've been well tested, your admin is confident in them, that they're going to continue to work and stay updated. Likely, there are also visuals that have been created by your company and they want to share with you. So make sure to check this out and see if there are any visuals that have been pre-approved for your use. The first visualization I'm going to talk about is the network visualization and filter. This visual was created by Zoom Charts, and there's actually both a free and a paid version of this visual. You'll be able to find the free one in AppSource, so our normal marketplace for all custom visuals. And if you download the free version, you'll be able to try out their sample. And you can see this is a very beautiful visual. It is, has those nice hover effects, and you'll be able to see inside the chart all the different nodes and how they're connected to each other. So you can see quarters and how they're connected to marketing versus titles. You can see all this interconnection between this network and within this network graph. And each one gets a different color. You can filter some of them out if you want and add them back in. And by default, it has this auto zooming behavior where as you make changes, moving and adding things, or you can click and drag to move stuff around. And as I'm continuing to interact, it will automatically continue to update and zoom in to give you the best view. If you don't like that experience, you want it to stay static as you change things, they have this lock option right here at the bottom. And when you click on that, you can move things around and nothing within the chart is going to update. You can also choose to use this rearrange option that will automatically put it back into its default state. As I mentioned, it's highly interactive, so as I click on a point, I can see it darken the lines that show what bubbles it is connected to, and the one I clicked on gets darker effect. I can also zoom in to see more, to see all this information better. Like I said, there is a paid version of this visual as well, and that paid version enables a lot more formatting capabilities for the chart, so you're able to control how the lines between them look. You're able to show even more categories within this chart. It's much more customizable and interactive. So make sure to give this visual a try and look into the paid version as well if that is something that is interesting to you. The next visual is Slope Chart by MAQ Software. The slope chart visual is all around being able to see the difference between 2 points in time. So you can see a previous and a current, or now and what we predict the future to be able to see those differences between those two values. This is an R visual, which is so it's a little different than most of the ones I show you. I usually show you the standard JavaScript custom visuals. This one's an R1. And you can see here what we're showing is in 2012 and 2014 the carbon emissions. And so you can see this chart makes it really apparent that US and Australia have kind of flopped positions, or more accurately, the US went up slightly, but basically stayed the same, whereas Australia has moved down, causing the two countries to swap positions within carbon emissions rates. Important thing to note is because it has only 2 points, it's a slope. It's not a trend. You need more than that to be able to show a true trend, but makes it really easy to focus in on comparing previous and next values, which could be interesting for surveys if you're comparing, if you send out a product survey and you're comparing last year's results to this year's. It's a nice little feature for that. It is interactive as well, so for example, I can zoom in on just these two through click and drag and only see these two options. And then double click will reset me back to my previous position. So make sure to give this chart a try if you do have a report where you're trying to compare and contrast two data from 2 points in time. Our next visual is filter by list, and this custom visual is all around being able to filter down the data in your report page to a very specific list of values. So, for example, if you say you want to filter it down to 100 different categories in your filter pane, using the normal Power BI page level filter or even the slicer visual, you would have to individually check all 100 boxes to be able to filter to those 100 values. This visual will let you paste in a list, say from Excel or CSV file, and hit one button and automatically filter your entire report down to those 100 things you pasted into the visual. So in their sample report, I took, let's see, this is the custom visual itself. Let's make that a little bit smaller. And over here is a table that's showing the data that's currently in this slicer visual. So you can see I put the indicator in the category filter. And now if I remove this very last option and hit the filter button, the charts on that page update to only be filtered to these two values now. And I have only 2 values in this slicer, but you can imagine having to paste in 100 things, or 150, even 30 can be very annoying. So this is a lot easier to manage. And it does have this nice feature of if you want to paste in the filter and now you want it gone, all you have to do is resize it to a small shape, and it's dynamic and will filter down, or it will squeeze down into just the filter icon for you. The fourth visual for this month is the AS timeline visual. And this visual is all around being able to see basically a schedule in a nice, simple visualization. So this could be, I'm trying to track what days people are going to be going on vacation within my team. It could be, I want to see the different steps of my project that I'm working on and how much they overlap with each other in our current timeline. Looking at the demo they gave, it's like I said, it's pretty simple. You can see here's the travel plans apparently for Europe, and you can see for within here the hostel that you're planning on visiting is on the city hostel combo that you're planning on is on the left here, and you can see the dates for each of them. So it looks like you're going to start out in Munich in a hotel, move on to Salzburg hotel, then to a hostel in Florence, and go back and forth. And you can see easily if there was any overlapping times or any dates where it looks like things are missing. And so, like, for example, I was able to spot here's a day where I have no hotel. Maybe that's because I'm traveling on that day and I'm going to be sleeping on the flight or the train, but that is something I can now see that there is a day gap here between them. So this is just, like I said, a very simple visual that lets you easily view timelines for whatever data you have. The last visual for this month is AS TAccounts, and this is all around just being able to easily visualize your TAccount tables within Power BI. So you can see here's the custom visual, and it has a column for debit and credit, and here's the data that I had put in within a Power BI table. You can see, you have your ID shown on the left here, the date, the description of the transaction, and then for each of the different accounts, you can see the debit and the credit values all nicely displayed in a T table. If you have more than what can show in the chart, you also have the ability to show different pages and go using the previous and next buttons, go back and forth between the two. Under data connectivity, we have a massive improvement to direct query experience over SAP HANA. Currently, whenever you are using SAP HANA over direct query, we've been largely treating it as a relational source, which means that you would have to be really careful whenever you're aggregating any of the non-additive SAP HANA measures like counters, and you also had to be careful to make sure your report had good performance. Now with this preview feature that we're adding, instead we're going to be treating SAP HANA closer to we're going to treat it as if it's a multidimensional source by default, similar to what you would see for SAP BW. This new experience is a preview, so you're going to have to turn it on in the preview features to start using it. And whenever you're using this approach, you're going to see a single analytic or calculation view, and all the measures, hierarchies, and attributes of that view is going to be available in the field list. And as long as you're creating your visuals, the correct aggregate data will always be retrieved from SAP HANA. You can still use the old approach as well for direct query if you want, and you can change that once the previous feature is on. You can change that under the direct query tab within the options dialog, and then select the option that says treat SAP HANA as a relational source. Do know that whenever you make these you control these options and the dialog, this will only apply to any new connections created. It won't have any effect on any of your currently created reports. What this does mean is that for any of your reports that you've already created prior to this month, it will always continue to treat those SAP HANA connections as a relational source. Make sure to read the blog and our documentation to learn more about this experience. Now I also have a list of 5 features that I couldn't really easily bucket into any of the other ones. Most of them focus on performance features, so I'm going to walk through each of those now. The first one is that we have some massive performance improvements for direct query in general. We have tons of improvements for our direct query performance. For some key notes about what we've done to improve the performance. First, we are combining additive and non-additive aggregates into a single query. We've improved our handling of queries that have a large number of literals. We use a single SQL query rather than multiple for some visuals and calculations. We've optimized our queries to reduce post-aggregation. We've optimized the use of treat as in calculations. And we now have fewer SQL queries that are sent whenever there's a multi-column tuple filtering occurring. I have lots of details on each of those in the blog, so I'm just not going to cover in this video, so make sure to read that section of the blog if you are using direct query and you're interested to know if these performance improvements are going to impact you. They are definitely very large improvements, so make sure to read that section of my blog to get more details. We also have some open and safe performance improvements. Whenever you are using large files, a couple of months ago we released the ability to use, if you're using premium, up to 10 gigabyte file sizes. And if you are using these large files, we've made a huge improvement to your opening and saving performance. You can see anywhere between a 40% and a 60% improvement in these actions. We also have some improvements to the option called Show Items with No Data. You'll see this option whenever you have a chart, and for example in the axis I can check this box that shows show items with no data, and even if the field has its result is 0, normally we don't show it. When this option is checked, we will still continue to show it in the chart itself. So that's the feature itself, in case you're wondering. Now if you are using that, you'll see some major performance improvements for this. It can have On average, we've been actually seeing up to 100% performance improvement. Massive, massive improvements here whenever you're using that feature, especially with a lot of data. Another improvement we have is that filters related to columns that show items with no data enabled now respect model bidirectional cross-filtering as well. This next feature is related to something that's going to be coming up in the Power BI service very soon, not quite yet. You'll see an announcement for it in our blog when it comes, but very soon we're going to enable users who are consuming your reports to be able to pick up where they last left off. So if they come in and they filter down to their name or a specific product they're interested in or a region, whatever filters and slices they're changing, those will persist as they leave and come back to the Power BI report. And this is unique to each user. So basically every single person consuming their report will be able to filter down to the view they want, and every time they come back, they'll see that view. It's right as they last left it is how they're going to see it again. And there will be a button to easily revert back to whatever you, the author, have saved it at, so that they'll be able to control it and see what they want to see, and then easily jump back to the view you set for them. So that's the summary of the feature that's coming. It's not quite out yet, but in preparation for that, we want to give you control over if your consumers are going to see that feature for your report or not. In the options dialog that we have, under File, Options, and Settings Options, we have this new tab called Report Settings. And whenever you select it, you'll see a section for persistent filters. That's going to be the name of the feature. And if I check this box that says don't allow my end users to save filters and hit OK, now whenever I publish this file, the users will not see that option when it's released. The users will not see the option for that for those persistent filters. So know that feature is coming to the service soon. Like I said, there will be an announcement on the blog when it comes, but know it's coming, and you can use this option in your files to prep for that if that's something you don't want your users to be able to use. Our very last feature for this month is a quick link from our help ribbon to the consulting services feature in AppSource. So what consulting services is it's an easy way to find these pre-packaged services from our partner community for you to be able to purchase. You'll find this option under the help ribbon. It's called Consulting Services, and whenever you click on that link, it will take you right to the page that lists all the different consulting services that are currently being offered by our partners. And you can see there's a lot of interesting different things here. You have things like proof of concept, workshops that help you learn about Power BI, like advanced data visualizations. You can sign up for specific implementations. So for example, a Power BI dashboard design 10-day implementation, and you'll be able to see these pre-packaged services, what is the cost. And a lot of times they'll note if they're an estimate versus a firm price. And you'll be able to click on any of them, just clicking on one random. You'll be able to click on it, read more about the service, and contact the partner if you're interested in using that service. They also have other filters you can use here. So for example, I'm looking in the United States and I only want to see services they're offering in my state of Washington, which is annoyingly at the bottom of the list. So I pick Washington, and now I'm only going to see services that are available to me in the state of Washington. So this is a great offering from our partner. So if that is something that you're interested in, you're interested in someone coming in and teaching your company about Power BI, you're interested in someone helping you create a custom visual or setting up an implementation of Power BI, these are all different services that you can get through our consulting services. So make sure to look through here and see if there's anything interesting for you. So that's it for this month. As you can see, there was lots of really good features here, including some really high asks from all of you who are voting on ideas in user voice. So make sure to try out all these good features, give us any feedback you have, and continue to suggest different things for us to work on for our next release of the Power BI desktop. Thank you.